I didn't even know the wedding had started. The livestream link had been buried in a group text, sent the night before, after midnight, as if they were hoping I'd miss it. No caption, no emoji, just the link, sitting there like a breadcrumb, dropped out of guilt, like an afterthought. I clicked it anyway. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd wear it. My dress. And she did. The camera was shaky, handheld. Someone, probably one of the cousins, had propped a phone up against a floral centerpiece. It cut off people's heads and caught too much. Ceiling, but there she was. Danielle. She walked down the aisle in my dress. Not a copy. Not a similar one. Mine. The ivory silk one with the hand-stitched sleeves. The one Grandma promised would be mine when I was 12. Tracing her fingers along the fabric like it was something sacred. The one I had kept in a sealed bag in our upstairs closet, away from light, away from time. She looked beautiful. Of course she did. Danielle always does. Even when she's wearing things that don't belong to her. Even when she's standing at the altar with the man who used to tell me he loved the way I spoke when I was angry. I sat alone in my apartment. The curtains were drawn. A bowl of cereal sat untouched on the coffee table. I hadn't thought to make anything warm. I hadn't thought to change out of my pajamas. They hadn't invited me. Not because there wasn't room. Not because I was out of town. But because it might make things uncomfortable. Uncomfortable for whom? I had asked. But no one answered that message in the family group chat. Instead, Mom replied with, "Let's just try to keep things peaceful, okay?" Peaceful. Like erasing me from my own life would somehow bring calm. They didn't even try to lie. That's the part that stunned me. There was no false excuse about venues being too small or travel costs being tight. Just silence. Then her smile on my screen. Then the sound of vows that should have been mine. I should back up. Danielle is my younger sister. She's the kind of girl who always knew what to say in front of Dad. The one who laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. Who brought him coffee just the way he liked it and made him feel wise. She learned young how to stay in people's good graces. I didn't. I was too blunt, too curious, too unwilling to bend. I always thought fairness mattered more than charm. Apparently, it doesn't. 3 months ago, I got a text from her. "Can we talk?" That was it. I thought maybe she wanted to apologize for everything. For the tension. For the way she and Aaron had started seeing each other barely 2 weeks after he and I stopped talking. For the way Mom had started calling her the responsible one after I moved out. Instead, she asked if she could borrow the dress. She said Grandma had given it to the family, not to me. That it was a legacy item, not a personal promise. She said she'd only wear it for a few hours, that she'd pay for the dry cleaning. I didn't reply. I couldn't. 2 days later, the closet in Mom's house was empty. I watched the wedding all the way through. I don't know why. Each time I thought I'd close the browser, something in me stopped. I think I was waiting for someone to say, my name, a toast, a memory, an acknowledgement that I existed. That once he had chosen me. That once she had looked up to me. Nothing. Not even a mention. Just her laugh echoing through the mic, the clinking of champagne glasses, the slow fade to music as the screen went dark. The live stream ended, and I sat there. Quiet, unmoving. Not broken, but no longer willing to forgive. I used to imagine that I would wear the dress at a small ceremony. Nothing grand, just a fall afternoon, the scent of apples and burnt leaves, a quiet string quartet playing something gentle, maybe barefoot on a patch of moss, maybe with no makeup at all. I always thought I'd look more like myself that way. Not polished, not decorated, just seen. Grandma had understood that. She was the only one who did. The dress had been hers first. A custom piece, stitched by hand in 1959. She said it was the one thing she never regretted buying. Because I wore it in the only moment I was truly myself, she'd told me, her voice a soft rasp, the year before she passed. I was 14 then. I still remember the way she whispered it in my ear, like a secret, like a transfer of inheritance no one else was meant to hear. That's why it cut so deeply. Not just because Danielle wore it, but because she knew what it meant. And she took it anyway. When I was 8, I won the school art contest. Crayons. On poster board. A sketch of Grandma reading under a willow tree. They put it in the hallway for the whole year. I remember how proud I was, beaming as the teacher handed me the ribbon. But when I showed it to Mom, she said, "That's nice. Danielle got a gold star today, too, for helping her friend clean up." I nodded. That moment lodged itself in me like a shard of glass. Small, but sharp. I didn't understand favoritism, then. I just understood that my wins didn't echo as loudly. That pattern never broke. Birthdays where my cake came from the store and hers was homemade. Performances where she got flowers and I got a ride home. College acceptance letters that got a shrug, while her dance recital, in the school gym no less, drew applause for days. I stopped showing them things. Quietly, I stopped hoping. By the time Aaron came into the picture, I'd already taught myself how to swallow absence. How to disappear before they could forget me. We met in a bookstore, Aaron and I. He asked if the novel I was holding was as sad as the cover looked. It was, and so was I. We dated for a year and a half, quietly, carefully. I didn't tell Danielle until month 8. Even then, I kept it simple, said I'd met someone, that we were taking things slow. I knew how quickly she turned everything into a mirror. She met him once. At Thanksgiving. She called him charming. That was all. Then 3 months after we ended things, after the text slowed, and the silences got heavier, and I stopped asking him if we were still okay. I saw them in the background of a photo on Mom's Facebook page. A family dinner I hadn't been invited to. She was laughing. He was pouring wine. No one said a word to me. Last week, Mom called. The day before the wedding. I almost didn't pick up. Her voice was extra warm. That forced tone she uses when she's trying to sound casual, but really wants something. I just want you to know, she said. Danielle feels really bad about how things turned out, but she didn't want drama at the wedding. I said nothing. You're still family, she added. No matter what. Still family. I almost laughed, like I hadn't been peeled off and set aside years ago, like I hadn't become a ghost in my own childhood home. Like I was a guest at my own memories. I don't even know what being family means to them anymore. Maybe it just means being quiet, being useful, being small. I am none of those things anymore. The day after the wedding, no one called. Not Mom, not Danielle, not even the aunts. the ones who always find a reason to send voice notes with overly cheerful, just checking in tones. My phone was silent, and I didn't break it. I didn't throw it across the room. I didn't cry. I just left it face down on the kitchen counter, next to a cup of tea I'd never taken a sip from. The silence said everything. I was no longer needed. Not as a daughter. Not as a sister. Not even as a witness. I walked to the coat closet and pulled down the empty garment bag, the one where the dress used to live. It still smelled faintly like lavender, like the sachet Grandma had tucked into the folds. Held it in my arms like it had weight. It didn't. The weight was all in me. I stood there for a long time. I don't know how long. The kind of time that doesn't move in minutes, but in memories. And then, without thinking, I placed the bag back, turned off the closet light, and closed the door. Not with force. Not with finality. Just with absence. Danielle used to borrow things and say, "I'll give it back, I promise." She said that about my scarf in middle school, the one I saved up for with babysitting money. I never saw it again. She said that about the headphones I used during exams and the necklace I bought with my first paycheck. She always gave a version of the item back, a replacement, a copy, a better one, as if that was the point. But she never returned the thing itself, and she never returned apologies either. 3 days later, the photos went up. They tagged everyone, even the dog in the family portrait, everyone except me. I scrolled through them slowly, like pressing on a bruise. There she was, in my dress, being helped down the stairs by Mom, the same stairs I used to trip down every morning before school. The same hand Mom used to swat crumbs off my face now brushed Danielle's veil, with some practiced tenderness I barely recognized. Aaron was in most of the pictures. Danielle was in all of them. Dad stood with pride, his arm around her shoulder, like it belonged there. In the comments, relatives I hadn't heard from in years wrote, "Stunning bride. So proud of you both. You two are perfect together. Love wins." I read each one, not because I cared, but because I wanted to make sure no one remembered, make sure no one missed me, make sure I could stop pretending it was just a misunderstanding. That night, I finally did something small. I logged into the shared cloud album we'd all been using since 2017. The one where Mom had insisted we upload family memories so we could stay connected. I removed every photo I'd ever uploaded, the graduation, the birthdays I organized, the hikes I planned, the one time we all smiled in the same room, deleted, quietly, without a note. No explanation, just gone. I left the album empty, and left the group chat a minute later. No message, no flurry of texts, no accusation, only absence. And when no one reached out, I knew. I was free. I used to think silence meant punishment. When I was younger, it always came as a consequence. Cold shoulders, unanswered questions, the quiet snuffing out of warmth. Mom used to go silent when I spoke up, when I said things too directly, when I asked why Danielle got the larger slice, or why she didn't have to clean up after dinner when I did. "You're too sensitive," she'd say eventually, and I'd nod, and I'd start to believe her. There was a Christmas when I was 17, the last one before I left for college. I'd saved up and bought everyone gifts, even though I was working 2 part-time jobs just to afford textbooks. I remember wrapping them late at night, using brown craft paper and hand-drawn name tags. I even added dried orange slices and tied them with twine. Grandma would have loved that. Danielle's gift was a hardbound edition of Sylvia Plath's journals. She'd told me once she admired how raw her writing was. She said she wanted to learn how to be that honest. I thought it would mean something, but when she unwrapped it, she barely looked at it. "Oh," she said, "cool." 5 minutes later, she was squealing over the bracelet someone else had given her. My gift was already buried under torn paper and ribbon. "And Mom," she told me, "you always give such thoughtful things. You should teach Danielle how to wrap next year, like I was a helper, a shadow, a convenience." I carried that moment like lint in my pocket for years. Small, invisible, but always there. Now, at 29, I know better. Silence isn't punishment. It's protection. It's power. It's the sound of boundaries being drawn, not in anger, but in finality. And lately, I've been quiet in a new way. Not the kind of silence that waits for someone to notice. The kind that no longer cares if they do. I didn't block Danielle. I didn't write her a long message. Didn't send a voice note. Didn't post anything cryptic on social media. Instead, I archived the texts. Removed our photo from my bedroom wall, the one from when we were little, both in pigtails, pretending to be flower girls in Grandma's garden. She was holding my hand in that picture. I dropped the frame face down into a drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink, just placed it there like putting away summer clothes you've outgrown. A week later, a package arrived at my door, no return address, just a padded envelope with my name in Mom's handwriting. Inside, the dress, folded, crumpled, stuffed into plastic like it was a worn-out costume. There was no note, no dry cleaning, no hanger, just the dress, limp and dull now, smelling faintly of hairspray and roses. I stared at it for a long time. Then I reached for the lavender sachet Grandma had left me, tucked it into the fabric, zipped the bag, and placed it back into the closet. Not because I would wear it, but because it belonged to me. Not for a wedding, not for a ceremony, but because it was mine before all of this. Before Danielle. Before Aaron. Before silence turned into something holy. That night I made tea. The same kind Grandma used to drink. I sat at the window, the city lights flickering like distant stars, and watched the quiet shape of my own reflection. Not bitter. Not sad. Just still. Like something had settled in me. Like a room finally cleaned. I didn't want them back. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my own name back. Untouched, unshared, unspoken by mouths that only knew how to take. And slowly, I felt it returning. I didn't respond to the package. Not to Mom. Not to Danielle. Not even when Dad sent a message 3 days later that said, "Heard you got the dress. Hope you're doing okay. Let's not drag this out." Drag this out? As if I had started something. As if silence was noise. I left the message unread. Then muted the thread for a year. That felt like enough. I started making small edits to my life. Not dramatic ones. Not the kind you announce. Just quiet rearrangements. I unsubscribed from the family calendar, the one where everyone added birthdays, dinners, holidays. It used to make me feel included. Now it made me feel like a spectator at a show I was once part of. I unfollowed Danielle on every platform. I took down the pinned post of her engagement announcement I had once shared to be supportive. Before I knew, I deleted the shared album folder from my cloud storage. The one named Sisters Always. The one where only one sister had ever really been seen. And when a coworker asked how the wedding went, I just said, I didn't attend. Nothing else. No bitterness, no story, no defense, just truth, plain and clean. There's a quiet kind of justice that doesn't announce itself, like stopping payment on the things they assumed would just keep coming. I used to help out with bills, quietly. Whenever Mom hinted at the mortgage being tight, whenever Danielle needed just a little boost for rent, they never asked directly. They didn't need to. I was the good one, the helper, the stable one. So I always gave. But I stopped. Last week, the bank notified me the linked auto transfer had bounced back. They'd removed my name from the joint account. No warning, no thank you, and yet I smiled. Because they couldn't reach into a space I'd already closed. Not anymore. I started going to this cafe near my apartment, the kind with fogged windows, mismatched chairs, and the soft scent of cinnamon in the air. It reminded me of who I might have been in another life. One where I was never the placeholder. One where I was the center of my own story. I brought books. I brought nothing. I just sat. One afternoon, I wrote something on a napkin. Just 6 words. You don't have access anymore. I didn't mean my email, or my account, or the dress. I meant me. The version of me that waited, that clung, that ached to be seen. She was gone now. What's left is quieter. Colder, maybe, but whole. Danielle texted me yesterday. Just a photo. Her and Aaron in Italy, smiling beneath a stone archway. The caption read, "Found this little place you'd love. Made me think of you." I stared at it for a few minutes, then archived the chat. Not out of spite, just peace, just space. Just finally learning that being missed is not the same as being wanted. And I no longer wanted to be wanted. Not like that. I think the strangest part about silence is how long it takes people to notice. Weeks passed. No one asked me to come over. No one checked if I'd be around for dinner. No one sent their usual, "Can you bring a dessert?" before Sunday brunch. The group texts still buzzed. I saw the previews when they popped up on my lock screen. Danielle was redecorating their new condo. Mom was planning a joint birthday party for Dad and the baby cousin. There were inside jokes, recipe swaps, blurry selfies. My name was never mentioned, but neither was my absence. That's how I knew it wasn't carelessness. It was convenience. They were adjusting, replacing, filling the shape I left with static and smiles. But something started shifting beneath that curated surface. Not in me, but in them. Because absence, when held long enough, becomes a presence, of its own. It started small. A call from Aunt June I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice dipped in too much sugar. Just wanted to say hi, sweetheart. Haven't heard your voice in a while. Danielle's been wondering about you. So has your mom. Anyway, call when you can. I didn't call. A week later, she texted. Your mom misses you, you know. I left it on read. That was the first time. I didn't feel guilty. I went home, not to their home, but to the one I built. My apartment had always felt like a halfway point, a waiting room. But lately, it was becoming a sanctuary, a place untouched by obligation. I rearranged the furniture, bought a second-hand lamp with a yellow glow, hung new curtains, heavy ones, the kind that block out both light and memory. And I framed one. Photo, just one. It was of me and Grandma. She was brushing my hair on the porch. I was 11, barefoot, looking down. She was looking at me like I was already enough. That photo went above my desk, so I could remember who had seen me first, without comparison, without conditions. Mom finally broke the silence. She showed, up at my door on a rainy Sunday, holding a half-wilted orchid and a Ziploc bag of cookies I didn't ask for. I let her in. She stood in the doorway for a long time before speaking. "Your sister's been having a rough time," she said. I didn't reply. She set the orchid down on the windowsill like it was an offering. "I think she thought you'd come around," she added. "She really did miss you at the wedding." I laughed, quietly, not cruelly, just honestly. "She wore my dress," I said, "and married my ex. What exactly did she miss?" Mom's face folded. "You're being dramatic," she said, like it was 2004 again, like I was a child asking too many questions. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just said, "I'm done making space for people who don't leave any for me." That was it. She stayed for 15 minutes, talked about the weather, avoided my eyes, took one cookie before she left. I watched her walk away through the rain-streaked glass, and I didn't feel smaller. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt finished. Later that night, I sat on the floor in my pajamas, legs crossed, a candle flickering on the windowsill. I didn't need an audience. Not for my peace. Not for my healing. Some things don't need to be witnessed to be real. I didn't post a quote, didn't write a caption, didn't tell anyone that I had finally begun to feel, not better, but mine. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't fire. It wasn't fury. It was this: a room with my name on the lease, a framed photo that belonged to no timeline but my own, and a silence so complete it echoed. Danielle called. I let it ring, not out of cruelty, not to punish, but because I didn't feel like answering. I watched the screen pulse with her name, Danielle, sister, still saved that way in my contacts, like a label I forgot to peel off. I thought about deleting it. Then I didn't. Instead, I let the call pass into voicemail and went back to slicing an apple. The soft, deliberate cut of the knife felt cleaner than anything she might have said. 5 minutes later, a text. "Hey, can we talk? No drama, just talk." I stared at it for a while, then turned off my phone. Not because I was angry, because I was done being accessible on demand. I no longer owed her my immediate presence, just because her world had finally noticed I was missing from it. It's strange how silence unsettles the very people who built a life without you. Suddenly, they want a reaction, a reply, a piece of the old you, the one who would show up, smooth it over, play neutral. But that version of me was gone, not burned, not destroyed, just retired. I used to believe I had to be available to be valued. Now I knew better. Availability is not love. Silence is not revenge. It's self-respect, written in lowercase. The second message came that night. From her again. "I just thought you'd understand. We weren't together anymore. You never said it was serious. That was her version of an apology. A justification. Wrapped in softness. Stamped with history. Like our silence had erased her theft. But love doesn't need a receipt to be real. And betrayal doesn't need a scream to be valid. She knew what she did. I knew what I lost. And that was enough. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the box in my closet, the one where I'd kept all the little scraps of the life I thought I was building. Old postcards, ticket stubs, a photo strip of me and Aaron from that boardwalk trip where we had cotton candy for breakfast and got caught in the rain. I sat with it for a while, then took the photo strip and slid it into the trash. Not angrily, not dramatically, just one final act of quiet return. It no longer hurt, because it no longer belonged. The next day, Mom called. She didn't ask how I was, didn't mention Danielle. She launched straight into logistics. We're thinking of Thanksgiving. Everyone's coming. Your uncle will be in town. We could really use your sweet potatoes this year. I stared at the wall as she spoke. It wasn't an invitation. It was an expectation. A line in the script she assumed I would still play. I took a breath and said gently, I won't be coming. A pause. A sigh. Why not? Because I've stopped going where I'm not welcomed, and I'm not interested in pretending. Another pause. I think you're overreacting. But I wasn't reacting at all. I was responding. Finally, Thanksgiving came. I didn't go. I didn't text to say I wouldn't be there again. I'd already said enough. And silence, I was learning, is a full sentence when spoken from the right place. That morning, I made cinnamon tea and a single serve, apple crumble. I lit the candles that smelled like cedar and slow-burning sugar. I wore the sweater Grandma had given me years ago, a faded olive knit with sleeves too long and cuffs that curled, and I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had already mourned the version of family I used to chase. Now, I was done chasing. Around 3 p.m., I got a photo in the family group chat, a long table, candles, turkey, laughter, an empty seat at the end, no caption, no note, just that. I stared at it for a moment, feeling nothing sharp, no ache, no jealousy, not even sadness, just a soft knowing. They had saved me a seat, but they hadn't earned me back. I spent the rest of the afternoon finishing a painting I'd been working on. Something abstract, something mine. When I stepped back to look at it, I didn't try to interpret what it meant. Some things don't need to mean anything to matter. They just need to exist. Like me. The dress still hangs in my closet. I never took it out again. Never tried it on. Never donated it. It's not a monument. It's not a grudge. It's just a memory now. Like the rest of them. Still mine. Still intact. But no longer sacred. Danielle never followed up after her text. And I never reached out. Some distances aren't fights. They're fences, built slowly, carefully, to hold peace inside, not to keep people out. And I had found peace. Not because I'd been avenged, but because I'd stopped waiting to be chosen. I chose me, and that was enough.